How does your realtor and your lender make money when you purchase a home? Okay, I've been asked this question sometimes directly and sometimes indirectly, and it's really an interesting question that even if people don't ask directly, they kind of wonder it in the back of their minds. So, we're going to talk about the reality of how your realtor and your lender is actually compensated when you purchase a home. First, I want you to know that everything that transpires should be done in escrow as a part of a document that is written. Anything that was paid to the lender or anything that is paid to the realtor should be written in your escrow documents, okay? If anybody ever demands that you pay them something outside of escrow or we don't write this down, that is mortgage fraud. So everything that is paid to the lender and to the realtor must be captured in what we call escrow, okay? Or during the purchasing process on the documents that you actually sign. Nobody should require that you write a direct check to them or something like that. Your realtor is compensated based on the purchase price of your home. Now, typically, if you're a buyer, this agreement has been made as far as how much the buyer's agent brokerage is going to make and how much the selling agent's brokerage is going to make. This has been established usually before you come along and decide you're going to buy that house, because this is written in the MLS sheet and it lists out what the actual percentage is that both buyer and seller side are going to receive as a part of the transaction. Keep in mind that percentage is received by the brokerage, not necessarily by your realtor. I'll give you more information on that in just a moment. Now, it's often said that the seller pays the commission, so the buyer does not pay the commission. So you as a buyer, you're getting a realtor for free because you're not paying any of that. Yeah, that sounds good, but I will tell you the reality of that is it's not really directly true when you look at the numbers. Let me give you an example. Let's say that I want to walk away from a home and I want to make $300,000. I want to walk away with $300,000. Now, I know that I'm going to have to pay realtor commissions as part of that transaction, okay? Now, keep in mind that you're going to ask yourself the question, well, can I save money if I don't have a realtor involved? And I'm going to answer that question really at the end of this video. But if I'm trying to make $300,000, I know that I have realtor commissions to pay. So I know I have to price that home at a certain amount in order to still walk away with $300,000 after I pay the realtor commissions. The amount that I priced that home at is actually an amount that's going to be paid by the buyer. So while the buyer does not directly pay the realtor commissions, and while the seller dollar for dollar pays the realtor commissions on both the buyer and the seller side, in reality, it's not really true that the buyer doesn't pay the commissions, but they pay it as a part of the loan because they pay a higher price, if you understand what I'm saying. So the seller pays the realtor commissions to both the buyer and the seller side directly. Now, some people will say, well, you can see how much your realtor is making if you look at the closing disclosure of the buyer. And some buyers will do that. They'll look at like, wow, the realtor made that much money when they sold this house or when they helped me buy this house. And that's not entirely true, because every realtor has a split. They have some fee that they pay. They either pay a flat brokerage fee, or they have a 90-10 split, or a 60-40 split, or a 50-50 split. There is some percentage of a split that they have with their brokerage. So the amount that you see on your CD in section H, that is the amount that the brokerage receives, but that's not necessarily the amount that your realtor is receiving. Now that we've covered the realtor, let's talk about your lender. Your lender is paid based on the loan amount that you have. So while the realtor is paid based on the purchase price, the loan officer is usually paid based on the loan amount. Why does that make a difference? It makes a huge difference, because if you're buying a $1 million home, your realtor is gonna make a large commission on that $1 million home. But if you're putting $900,000 down, your loan officer is really not making a lot of money off of that $100,000 loan, because you're putting so much money down. The amount that's being brought into the lender is actually $100,000, regardless of the fact that you're buying a $1 million house. Typically, on the realtor side, there is 3% on both buyer and seller side that the realtors are making for the brokerage. Okay, keep in mind splits and all of that other stuff. On the loan officer side, the average compensation for a loan officer, average, is about 100 basis points. Okay, sometimes a little bit higher, sometimes a little bit lower, but the average compensation is around 100 bips. We call it 100 bips. For you, it's about 1% of your loan amount that the loan officer is making on average. Now, you need to understand that both your realtor and your loan officer, they have expenses. So the amount that they actually walk away with from the transaction is not what you see on the CD and not what you see as 1% of your loan amount, because the reality is they have expenses. You take your realtor's driven somebody around, they have gas they had to put in a car, they have marketing expenses, they have fees, broker fees to their brokerage, all of these things that are costs that add up, and they have to pay those costs before they walk away with whatever they made from the transaction. Your lender does also typically. For example, I have 4 people who are part of my team. I pay their salaries. So it's not that when I close a deal and I make 1% or whatever my compensation is with my company, that I walk away with that money. This doesn't really work like that, because I have expenses, people I have to pay, processors I have to pay, assistants that I have to pay before we actually walk away with whatever the compensation is that we got directly from the company. Now, I'll tell you a little bit what I do as a broker. I shop among many different companies to find you the best deals. So while a retail lender or an individual at a retail shop is going to be paid by the company who you get the loan through, I am compensated a little bit differently, because I am paid by companies that I send the loan to. So when I send the loan to someone, they compensate me for sending them business. Now, the compensation is exactly the same for every single company. I cannot have different compensation for different companies. It doesn't really work like that. But I do get compensated by sending them a loan, and they win my business based on how easy I know it's going to be for them to actually close the loan, and based on their pricing. So I shop lenders based on pricing and based on processes. If I know it's going to be an easy process and I know my pricing is going to be great, which I'm then passing on to you, I'll send the loan there, and then they compensate me. You cannot compensate your loan officer directly for anything they do to help you get into a loan. Finally, I'll say this. Sometimes when I tell people how the realtor is compensated, they say, well, couldn't we get a better deal if we don't have a realtor? So do I even need a realtor? And I answer that question really, really simply. In our legal system, if you are on trial, you can actually defend yourself. But it is said that somebody who defends themselves has a fool for a lawyer and a fool for a client. I feel the same way about people who don't use realtors. I don't know everything I need to know about a specific area or a specific property. Therefore, when I buy a property, I go through a realtor. Knowing real estate, knowing lending, knowing the process of buying homes and everything, if I'm buying a property, I use a realtor. What more for you? Could you save a little bit of dollars if you don't use a realtor? Yeah, you can. But you can also cost yourself a whole lot of money if you do not use a realtor and if you do not have a professional advising you on this property. So whatever the realtor commissions are, I think they are worth every single dime, which is why when I buy properties, I use a realtor. And you should too. See you next time.